My boys, as crazy as it is to say, this week specifically is the halfway point of the decade of the 2020s, which is wild, okay? We're all reaching Unk status pretty quick here, but today I'm in a bit of a reflective mood because of it, and we're going over the best and worst cards, in my humble opinion, of the 2020s so far. So how this is going to be working, I'm going to be choosing one pay-per-view that I think is the best from each year, one pay-per-view I think is the worst, and the same thing applies to the fight nights. One of the best fight nights in my opinion, and one of the worst, okay? And the criteria I'm going to be using for this, the number of exciting fights or finishes. Okay, like it's got to be an exciting card. It's got to be a bit flashy. You got to have excitement. That's why we're fight fans. You know what I'm saying? Another thing, if it was memorable or worth rewatching. Okay, like is there memories that you can have from it? Is there rewatchability? Is there big iconic moments? That's being kept in account as well. The overall entertainment value. Okay, how entertaining of a card was it? You know what I mean? How stacked or weak the lineup was. Was there a lot of ranked fights? Was there a lot of name value? How stacked was the card going into it? And most importantly, did the card deliver? Okay, how good was it? How bad was it? Was it a snooze fest that everybody just forgets about and you're like, oh wow, I forgot that event happened? Or is there a bunch of iconic moments, a bunch of great finishes, or just a bunch of great back and forth wars? That's the criteria for what I'm doing. And of course, this is all subjective in my opinion. If you got different picks, which I'm sure you will because there's a lot of good and a lot of bad to go over here, drop yours in the comments below. I would absolutely love to hear it. So just starting off with the year of 2020, okay, the big bad COVID year, okay? What do I think was the best fight night of the year? And honestly, this is when the Apex kind of was relevant as hell, and not just relevant as hell, but like people were enjoying it. People were just happy to see the fights, okay? So a lot of these fights did take place in the Apex, or pretty much all of them did. Mariah's versus Sandhagen, okay? This went down in October, and Sandhagen versus Mariah's was the main event. Man, I really liked this card, bro, okay? Tons of finishes throughout, solid name value for what it was. I mean, a couple of decisions here and there, don't get me wrong, okay? But in retrospect, you had the debut of DDP, you had the debut of Tom Aspinall, who both got round 1 KOs, so that aged really well, and it was fun to see at the time. The co-main, I mean, you had Edson Barboza absolutely getting a masterclass marauder of a performance. The main event, too, Sandhagen with a sick, fucking nasty KO, man. We love to absolutely see it. And the prelims as well, they had fun finishes, you know what I mean? Tom Breeze, round 1 knockout. Chris Daukaus, round 1 knockout. Joaquin Buckley's iconic KO, I mean, over Impa. I'm going to botch the last name, so I'm not even going to say it, all right? But you know what I'm talking about. You know what you did. The iconic Joaquin Buckley knockout that's played over and over and over again, and as it should be. It's one of the wildest KOs of all time. That went down on this card in the prelims, and again, there were a couple fun back and forths, but in general, this fight card kind of had everything you wanted, especially towards the end of the year where COVID, a lot of people were getting bummed. A lot of the cards just weren't living up to anything in general. We were itching for shit like this, and this obviously, I feel like, really delivered, and it ended in a great finish, okay? So Mariah's and Sandhagen, in my opinion, was the best fight night of 2020. The worst fight night of 2020, okay? And there were some rough ones, all right, my boys? But I'm going to be going with Jessica I versus Cynthia Calvello, okay? Dude, does anybody remember this fight night? Does anybody care about this fight night, okay? I guarantee at least 50% of y'all watching this video didn't even know this shit went down or were watching the sport at the time, you know what I'm saying? And I don't fucking blame you. This shit was garbage, okay? Don't get me wrong. You had a classic marauder of a performance from Marvin Vettori back when he was getting finishes. He had a round 1 sub here in the co-main. But man, this card fucking sucked, okay? A lot of these decisions were very poorly paced. A lot of it was just kind of boring decision, occasional finish here and there, but again, it's nothing even too memorable. And the main event was a goddamn sparring session. It was a WMMA main event in the fucking Apex, and this shit sucked. All around, this was a really rough card to watch. This went down in June of 2020. There's nothing memorable from it, all right? Marab was on this card on the prelims as well, but that was a Marab in the early days performance, all right? It wasn't anything fucking great. So in general, nothing really memorable from this card. It absolutely fucking sucked, and I'm glad that a lot of us forget about it or weren't even aware of it. So moving on now to the pay-per-views. What do I think was the best pay-per-view of 2020? It actually did have some solid ones, even without the crowd for most of it. You know what I'm saying? I'm going with UFC 249. Okay, it was headlined by Ferguson versus Gaethje. This was the very end of the peak Ferguson run, or maybe it was already over, but that time he tripped over the wires, okay? But this was Gaethje winning the interim belt. This card was really fun, man. And honestly, it does have a bit of lore to me from like 2016 to 2020. I was just a casual watching the sport. I'd watch kind of once in a while every card or something like that, but I was a casual, okay? But when COVID hit, like this card specifically, I paid for it, I watched it, and man, ever since then, I've been a huge fucking fan of the sport. So shout out to this pay-per-view specifically, all right? It transformed me from a casual to whatever the fuck I am now, all right? My Ben Askren mug. But man, this card was fantastic, bro. Even personal bias aside, the main event was an absolute Gaethje masterclass, okay? Ferguson was competitive in the early early goings, but in general, Gaethje was beating the shit out of him. It was absolutely brutal. Sad for some to see, but you know what I mean. The co-main event. So who do I have a sick TKO over Dominic Cruz? Francis Ngannou. This guy hits like a goddamn truck. What was the question? Yeah, he knocked out Rosenstruck in one round, and not even one round, within 30 seconds, so that was badass as fuck. Calvin Kattar got a sick knockout. You know, you had Greg Hardy opening up the pay-per-view. I'm not really proud of that, but it is what it is, man. You had Anthony Pettis versus Donald Cerrone on this card. Fabricio Verdum here as well. Vicente Luque got a flashy knockout over Nico Price. So, man, this card, I feel like, was really memorable. And this was the first card as well that the UFC was bringing back ever since COVID really hit, and a bunch of the fights got canceled. You know what I mean? Event after event for 2 months straight, or maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit time-wise, but you know what I'm saying. They had to cancel a bunch, so fans were really anticipating this one, and it lived up to the hype, man. It was absolutely great, and there's a lot of memorable moments from it. So moving on now to what do I think was the worst pay-per-view of 2020, all right? I'm not just going to go with the basic pick here. I'm not going to say UFC 250 Nunes versus Spencer, because even that, I feel like, in retrospect, you had O'Malley getting finishes, you had shit like that. Like, there was a couple of, like, fun finishes in retrospect. I'm going with UFC 255, man. No disrespect to the flyweights, okay? No disrespect. I'm not just picking it because I'm picking it, okay? But, man, this card really is forgettable above all, okay? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, you had Paul Craig getting a sick knockout on the main card. You had Davison Figueiredo with a round 1 sub over Perez. You know what I mean? People forget, man. And, you know, Brandon Moreno, he knocked out Brandon Royval with inside 1 round. Joaquin Buckley got a knockout, you know what I mean? But in general, now I'm just talking about the good in it, okay? Like, in general, this card was not great, okay? Even though you might be able to pick out pay-per-views that went down this year that were worse for sure, I mean, I still think this isn't anything great. It's just the perfect epitome of mid, in my opinion. And when you have Valentina Shevchenko in the co-main and it goes the absolute distance, it's not memorable at all. It was a goddamn sparring session. You had Perry and Means on the main card. There's nothing crazy there. You had Caitlin Chukagian versus Cynthia Calvillo as well on the main card. This card is just so forgettable, okay? The only thing that really stands out to me from it is that Figueiredo got a badass win and he was the headliner for the event. That's really it, man. And Figueiredo was active as fuck this year. Pretty sure this was the year where he turned around a month later and fought Moreno. So, I mean, Figgy was the only thing that was really carrying this card in retrospect. And yeah, like I was saying, there were some finishes here and there, but dude, it's just nothing crazy. It's a very forgettable card, and I'm sure you could think of some worse ones that went down for this year, but man, this is nothing for the UFC to be proud of, okay? When you have the flyweight main event, and then you have the 5-round co-main event, it especially just goes the distance, and it's a fucking boring fight to watch. This card was depressing, boys. This is nothing special. No disrespect to Figueiredo or the fighters that did get finishes on this card, but it's just so forgettable above all. You know what I mean? So it was just a bit of a bummer to watch. Moving on now to 2021, boys. Okay, the crowds ended up coming back this year, all right? Which one do I think was the best fight night of the year, all right? I'm going with a very sleeper pick, all right, maybe here, but I'm going with Derek Lewis versus Chris Daukaus, all right? This was like, I'm pretty sure the last fight night of the year. It was like middle of December. And yeah, the co-main event, you had Bilal Muhammad doing a smudge fest for 3 rounds. That was very unfortunate, all right? Hey, you know, it's Stephen Thompson. What do you expect me to do? You know, I'm not going to go and get knocked out by this guy, all right? I had to do what I had to do. I had to take him down. Get the fuck out of here, bro. In general, man, other than shit like that, I mean, even the women's fight that you had in the main card, Lamos versus Hill, people forget, man, all right? Maybe that was a little bit of a fun fight there. You had Ricky Simone getting a sick knockout, Matus Gamrot beating up Diego Ferreira and getting a finish there, which is rare as hell. You don't really see a Gamrot finish a lot, you know what I mean? But Cub Swanson got a nasty KO as well over the damaged Darren Elkins, all right? And the main event ended brutally as hell with Derek Lewis knocking out Daukaus inside 1 round. So the prelims as well had really fun finishes as well. Like the women were getting finishes, the big boys were getting finishes, right? You had a classic GM3 classic where he's going out there and getting a very veteran-like round 3 sub, all right? From the start of the card to the finish, okay, like there were so many finishes throughout the card. I'm pretty sure only 2 or 3 fights ended up going the distance. And you know what? They weren't even that bad in general, okay? So this card was flashy, had a bunch of finishes, okay? Name value, it wasn't anything too crazy, and it might not be the most memorable, but in terms of being simple but sweet here, as a fan, this is what we want to see, okay? Especially when I don't think this was in front of a crowd either. I'm pretty sure this was in the Apex, so man, when we kind of need shit like this, especially for that time. So it was a nice way to close out the year, and in retrospect, it was a really good fight night. It just didn't have any name value to it, but that's kind of the only thing really holding it back here, you know what I mean? It could have been nice to have a bit more fun fights, a bit more back and forth as well, but I'm not going to complain complain about the sheer amount of finishes that we did get, and they were mostly sick as fuck. So I'm going to say that Lewis versus Daugus that went down in December is the best fight night of 2021. The worst fight night of 2021. There were some rough ones, boys. I'm probably going to say that every year, okay? But there were some rough ones, man. But I'm going to go with the very short notice event in general, and it was just a bunch of shit. It was Marina Rodriguez versus Michelle Waterson. Okay, that alone being a main event, it's a red flag, boys, okay? Yet Alex Morono knocking out Donald Cerrone in the co-main. I mean, you had Neil Magny beating Jeff Neal, which in retrospect aged like shit for Jeff Neal. It's very terrible to see, but I don't know, man. Even the heavyweights were going in the distance for this card. You had Rogerio de Lima going the distance. That's nothing crazy. When the heavyweights are going the 15 minutes, you already know it's a fucking dud. You know what I mean? So, and don't get me wrong, there was a couple of finishes. Like I said, you had Morono taking the soul out of Cerrone and shit like that, but this card was just really put together on short notice. There was only, I think, 8 fights in general, maybe 9, so this card really didn't have nothing, man. It's very forgettable. It was put together short notice. The main event fucking sucked. It was a goddamn, put a bullet in me. You know what I'm saying? In general, there was just nothing here. You could tell that there's just no passion, no energy, no fucking nothing. I guarantee that 9.9 out of 10 people could just forget this goddamn thing existed, and they'll be better off because of it, okay? It's an absolute disgrace, and we're gonna move on to the next one, okay? What do I think was the best pay-per-view of 2021? I'm going with UFC 261, headlined by Usman versus Masvidal 2, and then you had, I botched the fuck out of Masvidal's name there, I'm sorry. And then you had in the co-main event, you had Rose Namajunas back when she was actually getting finishes, and actually back when people liked her, you had her getting the, of course, very, very iconic round 1 head kick KO over Zhang Weili. So that was amazing to see. You had Valentina Shevchenko even getting a finish, alright? This was like a triple title headliner card. And then we all know how the main event went down. Usman getting the brutal, devastating, fucking sick as hell to watch knockout over Masvidal. You had Uriah Hill getting a not a knockout. That's when Chris Weidman's leg turned a goddamn jello. Very unfortunate. He was never the same after that. People forget, man. But even Anthony Smith versus Crute, I mean, that only lasted for a round before Crute's leg started spazzing the hell out. But that was entertaining while it lasted. And the prelims as well, man, they were full of finishes. Brendan Allen got a round 1 sub. Randy Brown got a round 1 sub. You know what I mean? Shit like that. So I feel like overall the card was very fun. And the thing that I'm not mentioning, but I feel like that's very important too, this, I think off the top of my head, was the first fight night or the first pay-per-view, whatever the hell, the first fight night where the fans were actually back. It was the first crowded arena in at least a year. So everybody was just itching in the audience for every single finish, for every single punch that landed, okay? They were absolutely invested because the crowd was just so happy to be back. So that's obviously, I feel like, going to be part of it is too. Like, it's just, for a fan, this was so exciting in the build-up. We were all excited to be back. We were all excited to just watch the crowd go down. You know what I mean? Because a fight without a crowd, as we know, it's why a lot of us hate the Apex. It just ain't the same, brother. It just ain't the same. So the energy was high. There were a lot of finishes. It was very, very memorable as well. There's a lot of things you could look back on this card and rewatch or just appreciate. So I think that UFC 261 was the best pay-per-view of the year. What do I think was the worst pay-per-view of the year? I'm going to be going with UFC 265, headlined by Derek Lewis versus Cyril Gane. I can't even fucking say it without laughing, dude. For the interim title, man. This is when they were just trying to get the goddamn belt off Ngannou, okay? Like, I'm pretty sure that he got injured like 2 months before this, okay? And he could have made a turnaround, whatever. But the UFC, especially Big Bad Uncle Dana, he started having problems with Ngannou backstage. You could really tell that they were trying to just get the belt off Ngannou and kind of put the pressure on him. You know what I mean? And obviously it led to this. Derek Lewis, dude, he threw like 5 punches the whole fucking fight. I'm pretty sure none in the first round alone, okay? And again, I have not rewatched this piece of garbage since it happened, but I just remember it was a Cyril Gane masterclass, I guess you could say, but not even that. Lewis in his hometown crowd, pardon my French, but fuck you too, like shit like that. Like, Lewis was funny in the build-up. He actually had abs going into this one. His coaches were saying, yeah, we've never seen him this serious, man. And he goes out there, and I don't know if it was like overwhelmed by the moment, or Cyril Gane is just that efficient on the feet, too elusive, whatever the fuck. He really just couldn't figure him out or find any shots. But Derek Lewis didn't even throw any punches, man. It was just I don't mean to say this because I love Lewis, but it was genuinely an embarrassing performance, man. I think Gane would have won regardless, but Lewis just had nothing for him. The fight main event shouldn't even been made. This pay-per-view just didn't have anything, man. You had Jose Aldo, facing Pedro Munez in the co-main event, man. That goes the distance. Absolutely nothing memorable. A couple finishes here and there, but like, dude, this card was so weak all around. A shitty main event that absolutely didn't deserve to be it. Barely any finishes, okay? And the ones that are just pretty forgettable, okay? People forget, man. Vicente Luque taking out Michael Chiesa. Like, get the fuck out of here, okay? Song Yadong and Casey Kenny opening up the main card, and then it's followed by Tisha Pennington versus Angela Hill, and the prelims in general, man, there's nothing here. I will say this though, Fiziev versus Green went down in the prelims for that one, and that was a really fun fight. Okay, that was really enjoyable to watch, so that's kind of a hidden highlight hidden in this absolute garbage of a fucking card, but in general, man, no name value, barely anything memorable, okay? If you want to include like Manel Kopp getting a round one finish, okay, there you fucking go for all the hardcores, but in general, man, there's nothing for this card. It shouldn't have been anything close to pay-per-view caliber in general, and the UFC should have been goddamn embarrassed about it. So, in my opinion, that was the worst pay-per-view of the year, man. There were some stinkers for sure, okay? I originally was going to go with 263, but this was worse. This was worse, man, okay? So now we're going to be going on to 2022, boys, okay? What do I think was the best fight night of the year? I'm going with Volkov versus Aspinall. It went down in March. It was the big iconic UK card. Man, this fight night was fucking sick, okay? This was absolutely sweet. A lot of memorable shit went down. It was entertaining as hell, and the UK crowd was absolutely ballistic, man. I appreciate y'all for that, okay? Aspinall showing levels, which is fucking crazy because Volkov's an absolute dog, showing levels here and getting a round one sub, really showing how good or how well-rounded Aspinall is, okay? Submitting Volkov in the first round is no joke. That was a great way to end the card. You had Arnold Allen knocking out Dan Hooker when Hooker was trying to go down to featherweight. In retrospect, that aged like shit, okay? Like, in retrospect, it just makes you sad as a Dan Hooker fan or whatever, but Arnold Allen getting a round one KO, that's something nice. Paddy Pimblett absolutely had the crowd buzzing like a motherfucking bee, and he got a round one sub as well. You had Ilya Taporia versus Jai Herbert on this card, where Taporia took it on short notice and kind of moved up to lightweight randomly. And yes, Herbert gave him adversity, but Taporia then knocked his ass out. So that was kind of a fun back and forth. You had Molly McCann with one of the knockouts of the year, all right, before she retired, lad. Now you fucking had Molly McCann. She was getting spinning elbows and shit. And even though she was down, and she completely shook up the crowd, and they absolutely ate it up. The prelims as well had some pretty fun finishes on it as well. A bunch of round one submissions specifically. So, man, this was an absolute treat for the fans that were there live. And just in general, like, the UK fight nights, man, they're either complete fucking duds or they're absolutely hype like this, and this just so happened to be on the happy end of the spectrum, okay? This was a really good fight night, man, and there's a lot of shit you can go back and rewatch or rethink about, you know what I'm saying? So moving on to the worst fight night of the year, fellas, okay? I'm gonna be going with Hermansson versus Strickland. This was dog shit, man, okay? The main event, Strickland versus Hermansson. It was a good win from Strickland, but it kind of just felt like a sparring match here, as a lot of Strickland fights kind of tend to, you know what I mean? The Apex Hall of Famer. But in general, no disrespect to Strickland here. Let's say even moving besides that, dude, this card had fucking nothing. The most notable thing that happened was Shavkat Rakhmonov, kind of was like when he was moving up on the come up and he got a round one knockout. That was cool to see. In general, though, man, you had Brian Battle on this card, Brendan Allen, Julian Erosa, you know what I mean? And then obviously the main event, we know who they are. So it's like there was some solid name value here, and like a lot of those guys ended up, now they're like in the top 5 or top 10. So I guess it aged well. But this card, it's so forgettable, man. Like there was no buzz, no energy. A lot of these fights went to the distance. And the ones that did, man, like it wasn't exactly a lot of back and forth wars. Like it was a bunch of shit fights, man. I'm not going to be basic and just go with one of the WMMA headliners. I've already been doing that a couple times, all right? So I tried to pick, I got to shit on the men as well for this one, dude, and I'm sorry, but this fight night was shit. There's nothing to it, man. And it was bone dead dry, no buzz in the air, barely anything to go back and reflect on here, and it just sucked. It sucked. That's all I got to say, man. Moving on, up next to what do I think was the best pay-per-view of the year here. I'm going to be going with UFC 281, headlined by Adesanya versus Pereira 1, okay? You had John Whaley and the co-main getting a round 2 sub. Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler was the feature fight of this card. Absolute fucking banger. And Dustin Poirier took his ass out of there by submission of all fucking things, all right? Shout out the retard Chandler. But you had Chris Gutierrez getting a KO over Edgar, which honestly is sad in retrospect, but you know what I mean? Dan Hooker, that's when he was kind of coming back from the losing streak. He finally got a win, okay? And by finish, finish as well. Don't get me wrong, it was over Claudio Puelles, so it's nothing too fucking crazy, but man, I remember how I felt in the build-up for this card, okay? And I was really excited for it. This just had big fight feel. You had the whole rivalry between Pereira and Adesanya, which was sick as fuck to watch, and how that whole fight unfolded, okay? On the prelims as well, round 1 submission for Renato Moicano. You had Ryan Spann knocking out Dominic Reyes, which again, that makes me fucking sad, but it was something, man, okay? There was a lot of finishes as well. You had Molly McCann getting her head squeezed off there, Matt Frivola getting a round 1 KO, you know what I mean? Carlos Olber got a round 1 KO as well, so it's just like, man, there was a lot to this card, and in the build-up, man, like, this just had that big pay-per-view feel to it. A lot of casuals were excited for it, the hardcores were dying for it. It had kind of everything you wanted. It had the storylines, it had Zhang Weili finally getting rid of motherfucking Cookie Monster Carla Esparza as champion, a fucking embarrassment, and that was where everyone and their goddamn mothers were rooting for Zhang Weili to go out there and beat Esparza, because Esparza right before this, man, people forget, man, and I don't blame them, but that was her last performance, being the boring as hell, the absolute dud fest that was her versus Rose Namajunas in the rematch. One of the worst fights of all time, so everybody was rooting for Zhang Weili in this one, and she made very quick work and very efficient work of Esparza, so I'm pretty sure she's been the champion ever since, man. So again, really fun fights like Poirier and Chandler, and the main event being Pereira and Adesanya, so there's a lot of memorability to this card. It was entertaining as fuck, it had that big fight feel, very memorable, definitely worth rewatching, and there was a really good amount of exciting fights or finishes, so this card definitely did deliver, man. I'm saying that this was the best pay-per-view of the year here. And moving on to what do I think was the worst pay-per-view this year, man, I'm going to be going with Kobe Covington versus Jorge Masvidal, UFC 272. Dude, did anybody else just forget this thing even fucking happened, okay? When I was doing my research or I was looking into this video, I was like, okay, there were some pretty shit pay-per-views this year. Which one do I go with here? Dude, this one, the reason why I'm really going with it, like, yes, it did suck. There's nothing really to it. But man, I just forgot it existed. I forgot that Kobe and fucking Masvidal even fought. It was just a very random, like, no title headliner for a pay-per-view. And again, it's not that you always need a championship on the line to really sell a pay-per-view, and these guys did have really genuine beef, so the build-up was fun, but the card was so shallow, man. Barely any name value, alright, unless you're that hardcore and shit like that, and just the fight, the main event itself, which was carrying the entire card, did not deliver. It was a bit of a smudge fest from Covington, and I get it. He had to do what he had to do to fucking win. It's his bread and butter. But, dude, it sucked to watch, man. I mean, there's occasional finishes here and there. Sergey Spivak, he's a great fighter, getting a round 1 KO. Kevin Holland, when he was on an absolute tear still, all right, and before everyone started fucking hating him, he got a round 2 knockout, made really quick work of Alex Oliveira. There's shit that's there, but in general, man, there was so many decisions on this one. Okay, the finishes that were there just were nothing too crazy or stand out. It was a boring card. Let's cut the bullshit. Like, it didn't deliver at all. The main event was such a letdown. Barely any name value or excitement going into it, man. It was just a bummer. Not entertaining, very forgettable. And again, I forgot this shit even happened. Not only the main event, but this pay-per-view in general. Like, I had my eyes opening up like a goddamn murder witness when I found out that this shit actually went down. I'm like, holy fuck, UFC 272, that's right. So, dude, don't try and be a fake hardcore, man. This shit absolutely fucking sucked, and we're just gonna move on. It was embarrassing, man. It was terrible. So, moving on now to 2023, boys, okay? What do I think was the best fight night for 2023? I'm going to be going with Josh Emmett versus Ilia Topuria that went down in June. Now, I do want to say this. I want to make a point out of this. Everybody likes to talk nowadays about how a lot of the fight nights in 2024 were garbage. Dude, 2023 was just as bad. I'm not going to lie. Like, when I was going over this, I had a lot of choices to where I could pick the worst fight night of the year, but there was barely any that really stood out to me as the best. So, on paper, and when you're thinking back to this one, you're like, Emmett versus Topuria. Why the hell would you go with that one? Dude, I wasn't working with much. All right, there really was not much here. So the main event was fucking badass, dude. Okay, Emmett, the fact that his chin really hung in there, all right, and he was able to take Topuria's biggest shots. It was Topuria's coming out party. Okay, the Bryce Mitchell win, I'm pretty sure he got before this, was great, but this is really what cemented Ilia Topuria as like, okay, this dude's legit as fuck, man. And Josh Emmett took a goddamn beating, man. But the rest of the card, it was really fun to watch. Okay, like, it was constant excitement. It was really well paced. You had finish after finish and just like banger after banger here. Okay, and yes, you had like Tafa versus Austin Lane, which ended up just being a no contest. I don't even fucking remember why, but that sucked. There's shit like that sucks. But in general, man, like David Onama getting a sick knockout, Brendan Allen getting another submission over Bruno Silva, okay? Even the women's co-main event, Macy Barber getting a knockout. That was cool to see, man. And then obviously we know the main event went above and beyond. It delivered. Wasn't the craziest in terms of name value at the time, but it is what it is. You know what I mean? The prelims, nothing too crazy or nothing too special or memorable. But again, like my big point here, 2023 sucked in terms of fight nights. A lot of us like to shit on 24 specifically, and don't get me wrong, it was really rough for most of them. But man, 2023 was just as bad, if not worse. I was scraping to find anything that just called the best fight night of that year. But this fight night card, especially the main card specifically, was really fun. And there's shit you can go back and really either watch or appreciate here. So it was entertaining. It definitely, I guess, delivered for what it was. So I think that Emmett versus Taporia that went down in June was the best fight night of that year. So going on now to the worst fight night of 2023, okay? I'm going to be going with the headliner of Jessica Andrade versus Erin Blanchfield, taking place in the Big Bad Apex. This sucked. This absolutely sucked. And the year that stood out of fight night sucking ass, this sucked the most ass, bro. Yes, that's how I talk. Yes, I have a college degree. Doesn't add up. Whatever. There's nothing to it. In terms of name value, it was almost as terrible as it gets. I mean, you had Jim Miller on this card. He fucking lost. All right. I mean, other than that, the closest big name that I'm looking on here that I can actually remember is Jamal Pogues. All right, you got Ovin St. Preux, lost as well, okay? But other than that, man, when you have Jamal Pogues as one of the more recognizable names on the fucking card, bro, what the hell are we doing, okay? The light heavyweights and the heavyweights went the distance. It was terrible to see, man. And the main card, man, it was full of decision after decision after decision. And they were the big boys. They were the fights that were expected to end via finishes and that brutal knockouts, and they didn't. And then the women's main event of Blanchfield and Andrade, don't get me wrong, impressive win from Blanchfield. Another person to submit, Jessica Andrade, in her career. Oh my god, though, dude, this fight night sucked. It sucked. I'm getting pissed off even thinking about it, man. All right, I have like my ATSD. It's my apex traumatic stress disorder, bro. Right, just thinking about this shit drives me crazy, man. This just had nothing to it. Such a letdown, an absolute embarrassment of a card. Not entertaining at all. The fights that shouldn't have been finished, they got finished, and then the fights that should have not went the distance, they went the distance, man. And then again, the name value was terrible. When the most recognizable names you have on this one are Jamal Pogues, who just got released recently. You have Jim Miller, he took a damn loss, and then you have whoever the fuck I said, Ovin St. Preux taking a loss. Dude, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel here, man. This fight night absolutely sucked. There's nothing to it. Boring as all fuck. Terribly paced. You can't go back and really remember or watch shit about this one, okay? It sucked. Can't preface it enough, man. So we're getting the fuck out of here, okay? Moving on up next now to what do I think was the best pay-per-view of 2023. Now, dude, there was some good ones. I'm not gonna lie, okay? 291 was in the running, shit like that. But I'm gonna go with UFC 290, headlined by Volkanovski versus Rodriguez, okay? Not just because my favorite fighter is Volkanovski, okay? But man, I remember a shit ton about this card. And I really remember how I felt. And I absolutely loved it. This one, and then you had 291 right after it. It just had those big card feelings to it. So it was a really good time for fans. There was so much to look forward to, okay? These were goddamn S-tier pay-per-views, but I went with 290, man, just because, dude, a Volkanovski masterclass, okay? This is when he was fighting Yair Rodriguez, and it wasn't just a complete fucking embarrassment. But now he's getting this bitch-ass rematch. Get the fuck out of here, all right? Cry baby Rodriguez at the time absolutely got devastated by Volkanovski. It was a great way to end the main card, okay? You had a really good back and forth between Moreno and Pantoja at the time. That was a really fun fight. You can go back and rewatch that one. Pantoja, I'm pretty sure that was the night he did become the champion, and here he is now, second greatest lightweight of all time. That aged wonderfully, and again, it was a fun fight. You had Dricus du Plessis knocking out Robert Whittaker when Whittaker was a minus 500 favorite. By all means, everybody was talking shit about DDP. Nobody was picking him, all right? He was a goddamn sin to the parlay, but he went out there and knocking out Bobby Knuckles, and now he's on top of the world, so that aged wonderfully. You had Dan Hooker versus Jalen Turner. That was one of the best fights of that year. That's a sick fight. Really good back and forth stand and bang war. You know what I mean? They busted each other up, and they're taking pictures in the hospital afterwards, all right? We live for this shit, brother. So Hooker and Turner was fantastic. Bo Nickel. Getting the... Back when Bo Nickel was on top of the world, all right? He fucking got a round one knockout over Val Woodburn. Wow. there was that. You know what, though? At the time, Bo Nickel was riding a lot of hype, and it was a pretty fucking sick knockout. I'm not going to lie. I feel bad for Val Woodburn in retrospect, especially at the time. It was just like, oh, that's sad. You know what I mean? But in general, you had Robbie Lawler's retirement knockout. He knocked the fuck out of Nico Price within a minute, so that was great to see. Very emotional interview afterwards. We love to see Robbie Lawler go out on top, baby. So, man, this card was so memorable. There was so much to it, okay? And Sean Brady versus JDM almost went down for this card. It ended up being canceled, but we were close to seeing that as well. The early prelims were full of fantastic finishes. So in general, man, back when Vitor Petrino and Cameron Simon were actually getting wins, that didn't age well. But man, this pay-per-view, especially the main card specifically, there is so much to it, so much excitement in the build-up. Like, fans were really excited for it. There was a lot of name value. The fights that didn't go the distance, you know what I mean? It ended in finishes were fantastic, but the ones that actually went to the judges' scorecards were really fun. Like I said, Pantoja and Moreno, Hooker and Turner, shit like that. So I absolutely loved UFC 290. 290 just has a special place in my heart. I remember watching it live with my boys, all right? There was like 10, 20 of us sitting in the motherfucking living room, bro. It was really fucking enjoyable, man, and I absolutely loved it. So moving on, up next to what do I think was the worst pay-per-view of the year. Now, this might be a controversial one, okay, because you had UFC 288, 289. There were some really rough ones, but I'm going with UFC 292, which was headlined by Sterling versus O'Malley, because at least those other cards you can kind of go into it and expect shit, and maybe they even went a little above expectations. But we were kind of expecting a solid card here. It was O'Malley's coming out party, finally getting a title shot, and I remember being so goddamn bored watching this one, bro, okay? You had Ian Gary, who just couldn't finish Neil Magny after talking all of that shit, okay? And like, yeah, it was a good win for him. It was impressive. He tried to make it entertaining by like flipping him off and shit, but dude, he couldn't get him out of there. And everybody and their moms is finishing Neil Magny. Well, pause. But you know what I'm fucking saying? You had Mario Batista and Damone Blackshear on the main card. I mean, that was solid, but again, nothing too crazy here. And a lot of people thought Blackshear won. You have Cheeto Vera and Pedro Muniz, which almost put me to fucking sleep, dude. It was a pitter-patter fest. I'm not gonna lie. And then you have the co-main event of Zhang Wei Li versus Amanda Lemos. Like, dude, it was a really impressive performance. I'm pretty sure Zhang set the record for like the most significant amount of ground strikes that ever happened in like a women's strawweight fight or some shit like that. Whatever the record was, I'm botching the fuck out of it, but it was a really impressive performance. But dude, boring as fuck to watch for 25 minutes, bro. You know what I mean? I remember I was sitting next to my buddy who was a casual, and he was just sitting there bored as hell, and I had to convince him, like, now this is impressive. Now this right here, this shit don't happen often. Jesus Christ, man. It was like that kind of shit. You gotta force it. The prelims too, man. Yeah, there was a couple of solid finishes. Round 1 KO coming from Gregory Rodriguez. That's it. That's really it, man. Yeah, I hope that pause was loud right there, bro, because I got nothing to say about this, okay? By the time that the actual main event happened, like, it was just boring as hell, all right? It was just underwhelming, and then you had the main event, which people were trying to get excited for, but I remember at the time, a lot of us thought that Sterling was going to go out there and get some boring decision win. So, yes, O'Malley did get a really cool knockout. That was fun to see. Him winning the belt in retrospect was cool, but man, for all the shit you had to go through to get to that point, just for it to be like a Sean O'Malley round 2 KO, and a lot of people were just like, I'm not necessarily complaining about the stoppage, but it wasn't exactly the flashiest KO, okay? Like, yeah, he knocked down Sterling, but it kind of took a little bit of dominant strikes from above to really take out Sterling and get the ref off of him. So in general, man, like, that was the only fucking saving grace about this pay-per-view. That's why I'm putting it on here as the worst pay-per-view of the year above some of the other cards that you could argue were worse, because, dude, we kind of at least expected something out of this one, and we really didn't get shit. Prelims were duds. Main card was a fucking dud. I was almost fucking asleep by the time the main event happened. God forbid that the main event wasn't as solid as it was in terms of like an exciting matchup. If it didn't have that, this card, it would have been even fucking worse. It's unforgivable, my brother. So I'm putting 292 as the worst pay-per-view of the year, okay? This might upset some people, but I'm standing my base with it. It fucking sucked. It was boring as hell, and there's nothing memorable about it. So moving on now to 2024, man, okay? What am I going to be going with for the best fight night of this year? I'm going to be going with Jan versus Figueiredo, UFC Macau. This one was fucking awesome, boys. Let's just cut the shit, okay? China finally had a fight night coming back, all right? And it was full of exciting finishes, all right? That one doctor lady got the head kick KO. Zhang Min Yang with a nasty knockout. Like, this card was full of really fun back and forths, like the main event, Jan versus Figueiredo. That's a great one you can go back and rewatch, you know what I mean? So that was a really fun fight that a lot of the hardcores were excited for. And in general, like, this card didn't have a lot of name value. They did put a lot of the Chinese fighters on there, but they they fucking delivered, brother, okay? The crowd was really amped up. They were really excited for it. And in general, like, flashy knockout after knockout after knockout, man. So this was a fucking badass card. In my opinion, it was the best fight night of last year, okay? So it was a great crowd, great finishes, a lot of excitement, and the main event absolutely delivered. Like, ultimately, Jan beat the absolute fuck out of Figueiredo, but it was still a really good back and forth. It was still a fun fight to go back and rewatch there. So very memorable, very entertaining, whether you woke up at 2 a.m. or it was actually at night for you, whatever the fuck. Yeah, it was a really good fight night, man. Aged very well. So moving on now to what do I think was the worst fight night of last year, okay? In 2024, man, let's just cut the shit. This is where we all just hit the wall with the Apex, okay? 2023, full of shit fight nights, okay, but we were still handling it, whatever. We shouldn't have, but it is what it is. We finally were just so done with this shit, and we were getting a bunch of bullshit, so there was a lot of shitty ones to cover here. I'm going with Tybura versus Spivak 2. God, this was fucking embarrassing, bro, man. Like, I remember just, like, turning on the TV. I made it, like, 2 or 3 fights in, and I just had to turn it off. I'm like, dude, what am I doing? I gotta go out or some shit. I gotta do fucking something, anything but this, bro. Like, and I bet you're gonna say, oh, well, the real hardcores will watch this shit. Dude, don't get me wrong. I love watching the fights. I absolutely love it, okay? We live for this shit, brother. But, dude, this fucking sucked. You don't have to just sit through this nonsense, man. There was nothing to look forward to in the build-up. It was an absolutely pointless fucking rematch. Okay, have some standards, please, for the love of God, man. Like, this fight night fucking sucked. A terrible main event. I don't give a fuck if it ended in some kind of finish. And then the main card was just full of boring decision, okay? Nothing memorable here, man. There's nothing at all. The Apex is a goddamn war crime, okay? And in general, man, like, just the prelims have nothing. I'm pretty sure there was only like 9 fights on this card as well, so it's just like, this had nothing. It was a shitty main event, a blob rematch that nobody asked for, and this card is just so forgettable. It's not even forgettable. The fact that I remember it sucking so goddamn bad, okay? It just sucked. It sucked, man. So, again, this is a fucking war crime. We got a bunch of pretty bad Apex cards last year, but this one was the F tier of all F tiers, in my opinion, okay? You don't gotta put up your hardcore glasses just to defend this one. Just admit that it sucked, brother. This fucking was terrible. Nothing to it at all. It's a goddamn disgrace. So, I'm putting Tybura versus Spivak 2 that went down in the Apex last August as the worst fight night of 2024, okay? Moving on now to what do I think was the best pay-per-view of 2024. I'm not going to be that basic answer that just says UFC 300. In my opinion, UFC 300, of course, was the best pay-per-view I've ever seen. Of course, it was the best pay-per-view of 2024 alone. But, like, we all know how great 300 was, okay? I'm going to be going with UFC 308 to show some love to this card, because any other year, man, this would really, really stand out. But the fact that 300 went down, okay, and we all just went, yeah, 300, it was the best card ever. Yeah, we know, okay? And it was fantastic, but 308 deserves some love. The main event, man, we were all so excited for it. Topuria and Holloway, a lot of people were going with Max. A lot of people were going with Ilya, and the fight delivered, man, okay? Flashy as fuck knockout in the 3rd round for Topuria. And in the first 2 rounds, man, Holloway was making it competitive as hell, throwing a bunch of spinning kicks, throwing a bunch of jabs that were landing clean to Topuria, okay? He was in the pocket and not afraid to get in there. Yes, Topuria rocked him a couple of times. Yes, he got a couple of takedowns in, but it was a good back and forth, man. So the main event, a lot of us were so excited for it, and in general, it lived up to that hype. And then you had the co-main event. Khamzat Chimaev submitting Whitaker and breaking his damn jaw around. I'm not a big Chimaev fan, but that's impressive as hell to do, man. And it really just cemented himself as legit as fuck if the Usman win didn't do it. You know what I mean? So he shut down all that bullshit. You had Ankalaev versus Rakic. That was solid. Not that much of a memorable fight. Little back and forth. But whatever. It was a number 1 contender fight. Then you had Lerone Murphy and Dan Ige. Pretty underrated fight. Kind of a people forget man kind of performance. It was a good little back and forth. It was a fun fight. You had Shara Magomedov with one of the best knockouts of the year to open up the main card, so that was absolutely fantastic to see over Armin Petrosian. Ibo Aslan getting a knockout win within a minute to end the prelims. Jeff Neal taking out RDA. Kind of unfortunate how it ended. I'm pretty sure it was some kind of injury for RDA, but still Jeff Neal getting a sick knockout. Abus Magomedov versus Bruno Ferreira. That was fun back and forth before, it eventually ended via the Mr. Cardiac Arrest himself, Abus Magomedov, not only making it to the 3rd round still alive, but getting a finish in the 3rd round. So that was great to see. Kennedy Uzuchuku making his heavyweight debut and getting a round 1 knockout over Chris Barnett. There was so much to this card, man, okay? Yes, there was a robbery here and there, okay? Renat Fakardinov getting fucking robbing Carlos Leal. That was absolute a bullshit way to open up the card. But other than that, man, you had a ton of finishes, a ton of shit you can go back and rewatch. You had Matus Rebecki versus Orabai, man. That was one of the best fights of last year. That was kind of just hidden in the prelims there before all the name value guys showed up. Rebecca and Orabai is a fantastic fight. Round 3 alone could feed generations, man. So absolutely love that. Fantastic fight. So many finishes throughout the card. So much name value, all right? They stacked the hell out of all the Abu Dhabi cards. We get it. But this one, man, can't complain, dude. It was absolutely fantastic. It was a joy to watch. A bunch of fans were really excited for it in the build-up with a really intriguing main event, man. So I'm going to show some love to 308 here, bro. A fantastic card from start to finish. Well, maybe not start. Fuck you, Fagardina, for Rob and Leo, but it is what it is. Moving on now to what do I think was the worst pay-per-view of 2024, okay? Now, I could go out there. I could say UFC 309, UFC 304, but I don't think so, dude. I'm going with UFC 302, headlined by Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier. Dude, this card sucked. Don't fucking hit me with that fake hardcore bullshit, okay? This is a D-tier pay-per-view here, man, okay? The co-main event was an absolute snooze fest, okay? And then you had Nico Price versus Morono. There's nothing there. You had Randy Brown versus Zaleski dos Santos opening up the main card. And again, Nico Price and Alex Morono. That was on the main card. Those were the first 2 fights to open that up. Dude, and they were just a bit of boring decisions here, man. And the co-main was a snoozer, and Strickland versus Costa. Here's the fucking thing, you guys. I promise I'm gonna go out there and be entertaining for you fucking guys. I'm gonna go to war for you guys. And then he does this bullshit, okay? The only redeeming things about this card was the fantastic main event. We all love to see shine bright like a diamond. You know what You know what I'm saying, man. Dustin Poirier getting his final title shot, all right? A lot of us were excited for it, man. Everyone had their Dustin Poirier tees on and all that shit. And Makhachev showed he's an absolute dog, if you didn't already prove that already. One of the best fights of last year. The main event saved this card from being like a D tier to an absolute F, okay? Yes, Kevin Holland got a good submission win inside the first round over Mikhail Olasejchik after Olasejchik rocked into the ground, almost had him out. Well, not almost had him out of there, but it was a little close for Holland there, okay? But Holland showed how good his jiu-jitsu base is. Got a flashy finish there, but that was it. The prelims were full of bullshit, okay? You had Almeida versus Romanov, which was like, he was going out there and arguing that he should have gotten the performance bonus or like the fight of the night or some bullshit. That's how rough this card was, man. There was nothing to it at all. So many decisions. Boring back and forth. Like the decisions that went down besides like the main event were just nothing memorable, man, okay? And then we thought that the fight between like Cesar Almeida and Roman Kopylov was going to be fireworks, and that was a bit of a letdown a little bit. 302, dude, all right? This just had nothing. It was just disappointing as hell. I mean, going into it, we knew we were kind of fucked because you had Nico Price and fucking Zaleski dos Santos opening up the main card. Those guys shouldn't have been on there, but man, this fight night was full of boring decisions. There's nothing memorable about it besides the main event. And the main event was absolutely fantastic, okay? Again, that was the saving grace that saved this card from going to a D tier to an F, okay? But shout out Makhachev and Poirier. This, in my opinion, was the worst pay-per-view of last year, okay? So moving on now to 2025, boys, okay? We're living in the present now, all right? For this one, I'm not going to be doing 4 cards. I'm not going to do best and worst pay-per-view, best and worst fight night. I'm just going to be doing what do I think was the best card in general so far of the year, okay? And what do I think was the worst card in general for the year, okay? I'm not doing the whole 4 ones just because we're only halfway through the year. There's not too much to work with here. So what do I think was the best card overall so far for this year? UFC 311, man. I'm going with UFC 311, headlined by Makhachev versus Moicano. We were all so excited for this one in the build-up, and even after the bullshit of Saryuki and fucking up our entire timeline, okay? Fucking up everything for Makhachev in the lightweight division here. Fucking hell, get out of here with that. But in general, this card was still amazing. Even after we found all that out the day before, we were still just as excited, if not a little bit more, man. And again, we much would have rather seen Makhachev face Saryukin. We would have had Moicano versus Dariush, okay? We much would have preferred that, but like, we can't lie, man. There was a buzz in the air when we found out all these changes, and we're like, oh shit, now Moicano's stepping in, and like, Moicano was riding the hype of the world, you know what I mean? Like, so in general, the fights were a little bit of a downgrade, but it still was amazing, okay? The main event was great. The co-main event, the storyline between Merab and Umar Nurmagomedov, and that was one of the best bantamweight title fights ever, if not the best one. You had Yuri Prochazka and Jamal Hill, a really fucking fun back and forth. Shout out to both of those guys. They made it entertaining as hell. Almeida and Spivak was like an underratedly entertaining fight, okay? Spivak was honestly doing good on the ground with Almeida, but Almeida fucking knocks him out on the feet. That was a great finish from him. RDR versus Kevin Holland opened up the main card, and like immediately RDR was putting the pedal to the fucking metal, okay? Getting the fuck after it. all pressure on Holland and ended up submitting him in the first round. The only other guy to do that has been Khamzat Chimaev, so that was great. You had Peyton Talbot fucking over all of our parlays. He ended up getting a bit, I don't want to say fraud check, but he got exposed on the ground against Barcelos, man. So even that was pretty shocking, caught us all off guard, and it wasn't even that bad of a fight. It was pretty solid. You had Azamat Bakoyev making his debut. That was on short notice. The Russian Paulo Costa, great knockout from him. We pretty much thought that Reese was fucking dead afterwards, all right? Grant Dawson and Diego Ferreira is like an underratedly fun fight. That was a pretty sick back and forth. Dawson showed improved skills in the striking department, and yes, he ended up gassing out a little bit, and that third round was a bit of a smudge fest, but in general, it was a really fun fight. But the prelims and the main card were absolutely fantastic, and in general, this card had so much buzz and so much hype going into it, and it definitely did deliver, even with all the last-minute changes. So I think 311 so far has been the best overall card of the year. The worst card of the year for 2025 so far. I don't mean to be recency bias at all, okay? I just genuinely feel this way. It has to be Blanchfield versus Barber, man. This is genuinely one of the worst fight nights I'd ever seen as a fan, man. Like, this fucking sucked, okay? Like, the whole situation with, I guess I should call it, with the main event. I mean, I guess we kind of got saved in retrospect, but even then, that shouldn't have been the damn main event in the first place, let alone for this fucking Apex shit, man. You had the main event at Gamrot and Klein, okay? And in general, like, there was no name value on this card. Like, yes, you had Dustin Jacoby getting a sick knockout. There's just nothing really to this card. It's so forgettable already, man. It absolutely sucked. The whole disaster with the main and the co-main and all this bullshit. No name value, not too many finishes, and the ones that did go down just weren't anything crazy. So, man, fuck this card. It genuinely was one of the worst cards I've ever seen in my time as a fan here. And I know it just happened last week, so I'm not trying to do recency bias. I just genuinely think it was this bad. Because you gotta think about the fight nights that we've gotten this year. Like, they've been pretty good, okay? Seattle, Saudi Arabia, Kansas City. They're going back to all these places, and they're really kind of stacking them up a bit. Like, yes, the Apex cards, they relatively are not stacked, and yes, they kind of suck, but this one was the fucking worst. And in general, kudos to the UFC, because they have been giving us really good crowd fight nights again. So I really do appreciate that. They have been delivering. We're going to get even more this summer, you know what I mean? So that's great to see, but when there's shit like this, that's just a clusterfuck, man. It's garbage relatively here, man. So in my opinion, Blanchfield versus Barber, or I guess I should say Gamrot versus Klein, in my opinion, was the worst fight night of this year, man. Or not the worst fight night, the worst card of this year, in my opinion. So that is going to be it here, man, for this absolute unit of a yap session. Let me know what you think in the comments below, man. I'm sure that a lot of y'all got a bunch of different picks than me. Again, I'm trying to be subjective here, just my opinion, my one piece, if you will. But let me know what you think in the comments below, dude. I'm really curious. I absolutely want to hear it. Let me know what you think of my picks. Let me know yours. Would love to hear it. If you guys could like this video, I'd really, really appreciate it. If you want to hit subscribe, please motherfucking do. Thank you guys so very much again for 1,000 subscribers. Let's get the 2K, baby. Hell fucking yeah. Let's ride the wave, boys. So all the smoke here. Endlessly appreciate y'all. Thank you so very much for giving me your time and attention, man. Whether you're working out, whether you're eating your motherfucking breakfast, all right? A mouthful of Cheerios, whatever the hell, dude. I appreciate you, man. So thank you so very much. All the smoke here. Hope you have a good one, boys. We got 316 this weekend. Very excited for it. And I will see you all next time.